Every morning when I wake up, and I'd like to say the first thing I do when I open my eyes is I thank God for giving me another day and another chance to get it right. But I don't want to lie to you. The first thing I do is turn off my CPAP machine so I can breathe on my own. But when I get up, I go and I do my normal things, and then I get in the kitchen and I turn on the coffee pot, and then I take my vitamins and my medicine, just like old people. But anyway, at about that time, I look down and the dog is there waiting for me. Well, she's got to get her allergy treats, and then I take her walk. She goes out and does her business. I come back in, I grab my cup of coffee, and I walk to the gym. Now let me clarify this. I call my recliner gym. So I go to the gym at least twice a day. But anyway, I go sit and I start my morning prayer, right, with my cup of coffee. But this time, my wife is getting up. She does all of her things and she prepares for work and all. She gets dressed, and because she's got to leave before I do. And she still says that's not fair, that she leaves for work before I do. But anyway, so she fixes her breakfast, and then she sits down and she says her prayers while she's eating her breakfast. Now, the dog, I'm going to tell you, I can tell what my wife's eating by the dog's reaction. If she fixes toast or some biscuits or something to that effect, and she has a plate, the dog sits with her. If she fixes a bowl of cereal, the dog comes and climbs on me and goes back to sleep. Because she knows if there's a plate, she might get something out of it. But if it's a bowl of cereal, chances are she wasn't going to get anything. Just to let you in on a little secret, lately she's been getting treats from that bowl of cereal. We don't spoil her much. Okay, she's got me well trained, but we don't spoil her much. But anyway, so what happens is that she looks at the difference, right? She says, well, I can get a treat here, or I can go back over there and sleep. Now, she's not coming to pray with me, but she just comes and sits, right? Well, sometimes we're like that. Sometimes we look at the shiny objects, or we look for some other solution, something else that's going to be more pleasurable than prayer. Sometimes we are willing to postpone the prayer, that conversation with the Lord, for some treat, for something else. How often is it in our lives that something goes wrong, that we have a health issue or a family issue or something in our life that causes a disturbance in our peace, right? And we look for a solution when we know where the solution is, right? But we don't go to prayer first. We try to solve it for ourselves. And you know, working in hospice, every time I go see a new patient or what have you, I always tell them, I said, hey, look, just remember, y'all are in my daily prayers. And the comment I always hear is, whew, we can use all the prayers we can get. And I said, yes, prayer is the biggest tool we have. But the problem with the big tools, if we don't use them, they fall to the bottom of the box. And it's always the last thing we pull out, when it should be the first. But you see, as Catholic Christians, we know that our faith will be tested. Our faith will be challenged. And sometimes that's why we don't turn to faith first, because it's going to be challenged. Just like in the gospel today with this woman, this interaction that Jesus had with this Canaanite woman. She wasn't even a Jew. She was a pagan, a Gentile. She didn't belong to their society. But her faith in Jesus Christ, from what she heard about Him, was so strong that she was willing to face embarrassment, to be ostracized by her community for going to Jesus to heal her daughter. And God blessed the prayers of a mother for their children. How strong is that? But you see, her faith was so strong that Jesus could do something for her that she was willing to surrender everything, to give up everything, to face that embarrassment. You know, we look at that gospel and we say, well, gosh, Jesus was really kind of brutal to her, right? Calling her a dog and all of this. Well, I'm going to tell y'all, when I was preparing, I heard a commentary and he was saying that in the Greek, now, y'all know I don't read Greek, all right? I have trouble with English. But in the Greek, it more refers to a puppy. That we don't give the food of children to the puppies, right? So it's not as big an insult in Greek as it was in English. But she didn't care. She had a response. She came back and said, well, hey, what? You know what? At least the dogs eat the morsels that fall from the table of their master. You see, and sometimes that's us. Sometimes we are willing to do the minimum and not go to Him first. We are willing to do the minimum. We come to Mass to fill an obligation. We do the minimum. So we're willing to accept the morsels that fall from the table. But we have a God who has a banquet prepared for us. We have a God who sent His Son so that we can, as children, as baptized children of God, we can accept the invitation to the banquet at every Mass. But sometimes we're willing to do the minimum. Sometimes the minimum is all the effort that we're willing to put out, right? Sometimes we come to stand before Jesus Christ because as Catholics we believe that bread and wine becomes the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. The banquet feast that we're invited to. But we're willing to accept the morsels. Because we want to do the minimum. During the week, I met a new patient, and when the nurse did the admit, she called me and she said, look, she says, the daughter said that you could come. I said, okay. She said, but, her words, she doesn't want you to do any of that Catholic stuff. I said, ooh, I said, this one sounds like fun. So I went. He was in a nursing home, and the dad was the patient, and he was non-responsive. He was just laying in the bed. The daughter was there with a friend, and we sat down and had a conversation. And we just talked. I mean, we had a couple of mutual people we knew, but we had a conversation. And the friend asked a question. And she says, you know, I'm not Catholic. I have a lot of Catholic friends. I've been to a couple of Masses. I went to quite a few funerals. She said, why can't I receive communion when I go to a Mass? And I said, because the simple answer is it because even though we believe in the same God and that we believe Jesus Christ died for our sins, we are not in communion with each other. As a Catholic, I believe that bread and wine becomes the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. Not a symbol, but it is Jesus Christ Himself. And I said, unless your faith tells you that, you're not in communion with us. And she looked up and she says, you know, nobody's ever explained that like that. And I told her, I said, well, you know, I said, if I went to some event at your church and y'all did the Lord's Supper or a communion service or whatever, I can't receive with y'all. And she says, really? I said, right, because I am not in communion with your church. So I got up and I said a prayer for the patient. And before I left, the daughter looked up at me and she says, Deacon? I said, yes, ma'am. She says, I got to tell you, she said, you give Catholics a good name. I said, shh, don't tell anyone. But anyway, are we willing to continue to pray to God? Are we willing to surrender ourselves, to surrender to Him totally? See, Jesus didn't come and do the minimum for us. Why would we do the minimum for Him? You see, what is it in our lives that we can improve on? What is it in our lives that we can do that's going to bring us closer to Him? That we stop accepting the morsels that fall. We stop accepting the minimums in our life. And surrender. Just like this Canaanite woman. Like I said, God bless the prayers of a mother for her children. The most powerful prayers. You know, last night I was thinking, it doesn't happen often, but last night I was thinking about a patient that I had years ago. When I sat down with him, he was a big man. And not often that somebody can shake me, right? That I have this wall that I build. I sat down with him for the initial visit, and he said, Deacon, he said, let me tell you what happened. I said, okay. He says, I've been fighting cancer for a long time. Had all kind of surgeries and all of this stuff. And last week, he says, I went to my doctor, and my doctor told me I have 6 months to live, that he's going to recommend hospice for me. I said, it's not an easy thing to hear. He says, no, he said, but you know, he said, when I left the doctor's office, he said, I had a friend that was in the hospital, and he was dying. So I went visit my friend. And he said, while I was there, he said, the priest came in and did the anointing of the sick for my friend. And he said, I asked him, I said, Father, he said, do you have a few minutes? And he said, sure. He said, I'd like to talk to you. And he said, they went to the chapel, and he went to confession. And then he came back. He went to his parish priest, and he told his priest about the diagnosis. And then he went home and told his family. You see, he put God first in everything. And this man died a peaceful death. I mean, he struggled toward the end. He got, you know, as you know, it got weak along the way. But he died a peaceful death because he didn't accept the minimums in his life. And when he was given this problem, this diagnosis, he went to God first. Can we do that? Can we say that in our life, our faith is so strong that when something happens in my life, I am willing to go and stand in front of Jesus and say, Lord, Son of David, help me. Lord, Son of David, heal me. Or will we just accept the minimum, the morsels that fall from His table?